Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Friday. It's Daryl here. It is bright and freaking early, 4 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, after doing yesterday's video, I talked about an illegal, what I perceived as an illegal search and seizure of the Delaware State College's lacrosse, female women's lacrosse bus. And this channel, as I named it, is Staying Clean. It's about recovery. So I started thinking about this, and I didn't know if there might be, I started thinking in my head about conflicts of interest. Would it look like I was promoting marijuana use? And so this video, I just wanted to give a little update. I gave it some thought, and I want to give you guys my opinion of legalizing drugs. And while I'm on the subject, I really want to put in my 2 cents about letting Donald Trump back on Twitter, and letting everything and anything on Twitter. That's what free speech. I want to get to that in a second. All right, let's start at the very beginning. Legalizing drugs. Now, I've used everything basically. I smoked marijuana when I probably started when I was 14, I believe. I smoked it every day. I was one of the people that smoked it at the end of the day. Some of my friends would wake and bake, as they say, and I couldn't function that way. It affects people differently, and for me, it was like how the baby boomers would have a martini or a cocktail at the end of a day, or beers at the local bar or whatever. I would just shoot for that. Like, I think it was 9 p.m. My favorite shows would come on TV. This is back in the late 80s. I think I'd watch Newhart back in the late 80s, and I'd spark one up, and I would have my New York seltzer. I think it was cream flavored. This was my thing. And I'd spark one up. And that was the end of my day. And I used to look forward to that. Eventually, I got into hard drugs, cocaine, then crack, and heroin, opiates, oxycodone, you name it. All right, let's get right into it. For me right now, I have no use for marijuana in my life right now, but I could see, I totally believe that it should be legal. I do believe it has great benefits for a lot of people, especially when you're talking about chemotherapy and keeping food down for a variety of reasons. And I totally believe it should be legalized for over 18 and over. I thought it would be a great income producer. Now, here in Connecticut, I believe it's legal at this point in Connecticut. That video I did yesterday, the Georgia, it's a sheriff, by the way. I said state police in yesterday's video. It's a sheriff, and he says he made it clear that marijuana is not legal in Georgia. So it's different in all the states. Here in Connecticut, it's legal. There's some ifs, ands, and buts, but it's mainly legal. And for me personally, I have yet to see the huge tax windfall that I thought would come from this. Being one of the biggest cash crops in the country, there's a huge grow center just in the next town over. I think it's called TheraGreen, something like that. It's a huge grow operation. And I really thought there'd be more of a tax windfall, that we'd all be getting rebate checks or something from the huge tax benefits, of legalizing and taxing marijuana. But personally, I've yet to see this. All right. Now, hallucinogens. I moved into using hallucinogens. I experimented with them for a time, and they had some crazy effects. I believe that there is a use for them for certain disorders. I remember taking LSD one time, and I was probably about 19, and I had an alcoholic neighbor that lived next door. This older guy from the like Latvia, I think it was, and he would just pound liquor all day. And I remember being on LSD and looking at him and saying, "Oh my God, if this guy just dropped one hit," because you get into a lot of self-introspection. In some ways, hallucinogens aren't good for some people that aren't prepared to see their real selves. But I think there is a use for hallucinogens, maybe with people with depression. I don't know, but I think there's a medical use for it. I don't know if it should be as legal as marijuana. Now, getting to the drugs that I don't think should ever be legal: methamphetamine, heroin, coke/crack. Never, never, ever legal under any circumstance. I know these drugs. I use these drugs, and in my opinion, they are just downright evil. I think there's probably some people that use marijuana that never really use crack or methamphetamine. Or the libertarians out there that are for legalizing everything, legalizing everything for everybody and leaving it up to the people, having freedom to use whatever you want. It's your choice. I've used these drugs, and I've said this in other videos, and anybody that's used these drugs will know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, say, crack, for instance, you inhale, and the second, the fraction of a second, when that exhale comes out, my personality would flip. What was important to me, my goals, my priorities, 2 seconds earlier, no longer mattered. I swear to God, a complete switch. Not to mention, I got a video on this channel down below about sex and a link to crack and methamphetamine. And I think it affects guys mainly, but it turned me into a completely different person and not somebody I wanted to be. Here's the thing too with these drugs: you are never satiated. People that want these things legal and have never actually that aren't intimately familiar with these drugs, methamphetamine, crack, I don't think they realize that there's never enough. It's not like marijuana or liquor, where you buy some, you catch your buzz, and and you're satiated, you're happy, you're high. That doesn't happen with these drugs. Your initial hit is your best, and then you start going down every hit from there, and it is never enough. If there was a pile in front of you, you'd do it till you died. You'd steal, rob, and worse to get this drug. Legalizing these drugs, not a good idea under any circumstance. That's just my opinion. Okay, now heroin. Heroin's a little different. I remember when I first started mixing opiates, cross addiction, when I was already addicted to coke and crack. I started using morphine. I bought 200 milligram morphine. I don't think they're even available anymore. From this girl I know whose mother passed away from terminal cancer. And I took one day, and the next day I took a break. I had a whole bottle of them, and I would always get diarrhea, and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night just after using one night. And I didn't realize at the time, but that was my body showing signs of physical dependence from one use. And let me tell you, man, physical dependence, I'm a recovering heroin addict. Physical dependence is not then it mixes too: emotional, mental dependence, psychological dependence. It becomes a freaking nightmare. I mean, if you haven't experienced it, anything you hear doesn't even skim the surface on what a living hell withdrawals are from this drug. So I don't, you could easily get caught up without even your own knowing it, the dependency for these. So I don't think heroin, methamphetamine, coke, crack, under any circumstances should be legal for recreational use ever. And that's just my opinion. I think in certain countries, is it Amsterdam? They have Needle Park, I believe it. They have shoot up areas and stuff. I don't know. I don't know. For people that are already addicted to it, this might be a good idea. I think other medically assisted treatment would be much better, like Suboxone or methadone. But I'm not that familiar with how beneficial their Amsterdam's legalized drugs across the board are doing for that country. All right, so those are some thoughts. All right, like I said, I want to just touch base on Twitter. Some people, like Elon Musk, thinks Trump should get back on Twitter. Thinks that anybody should be able to say anything about, just put it all out there. One of the GOP reps was talking about even letting the Taliban on, yeah, let everybody have their say. And I disagree. I think along with freedom comes responsibility. Some things are just dangerous. Take this, just one, let me just leave you with this one example. Okay, we've all seen very pretty women who have people follow them on social media. And a lot of times they can make some money from this. Say one of these girls had a stalker, and he started calling her ugly, ugly something or other. And then he convinced a bunch of other people to start saying that too, to harass her, to stalk her. In this situation, the company, say YouTube or Twitter or whatever, would not be able to do anything about it, because that would be just his opinion. This would be legalized stalking. And that's just one thing. Like, take, for instance, I know I'm rambling here, but the election and the Trump's claims of fraud. I think now, coming up on 2 years, it's evident that there was no significant fraud, especially the only people that have been caught have seemed to be Trump supporters. I'm not buying the whole, deep state, fake media stuff. Once something is disproven, it becomes a lie. It's not just somebody else's opinion. It's a lie. It's misinformation. Once it reaches a point where there's a consensus or just overwhelming proof that something is not true, it's no longer your opinion. You're now talking about a fairy tale. I think at some point you just have to cut it off. You can't have people. I don't think it's beneficial to anyone for people to spread stuff they know isn't true or that has been proven untrue. There's no benefit to that. You can't have any beneficial argument or discussion over something that is just misinformation. Okay, those are my thoughts today. I'm going to be back later. I'll have a better video a little later this afternoon. I got so much to do this morning. You guys have a great Friday.